I think messaging is an interesting story. It's one of those things that we developed in the mobile industry, but everybody can touch and feel it. So I think most people can understand what messaging is about. We're going to kick off today's workshop with a presentation from Mark Cataldo, who's the board chairman. And Mark is going to introduce us a little bit to OMA and the relevance of messaging to OMA. So Mark commenced his career designing telephony software and has been promoting mobile services in the international standards organizations. He's been actively engaged in creating the Open Mobile Alliance. He was elected as the first chair of the OMA TP in 2002 and then re-elected in 2004, 6 and 8. He became vice chair of the board and is now chairman of the board, and he's a senior advisor with France Telecom Orange.
Good morning and welcome. So this is the messaging workshop, as Kevin just identified, and we have actually held previous workshops in OMA, and we do plan to have a series of workshops in the future touching on various technical areas which are not only of interest to OMA, but we believe for the wider interest of providing services in mobile networks as well as in the wider space. So back in 2002, we had a very, and even pre-2002, we had a very different ecosystem and landscape. If you think back to 2002, we had basically feature phones. There were no smartphones around. We had low bandwidth mobile broadband. We had limited approach towards services, and those services which did exist were either in the form of supplementary services, as they're called, things like call forwarding, call diversion, and so on. And we had some nascent services coming into the mobile space, as we saw from the WAP forum. But there was huge pent-up demand, there was fragmentation, there was little or no interoperability. And that theme of interoperability was one of the key areas which OMA, when it was created, decided to address. If we look at our vision when we were creating OMA, this guided us in terms of what we wanted to do. And I'll read this, and I promise not to read everything else and all the other slides. No matter what device I have, no matter what service I want, no matter what carrier or network I'm using, I can communicate, access, and exchange information. And that is the theme around which OMA is built. And the key points are it's multi-device, it's multi-service, it's multi-network, and being able to access and exchange data and services. And then behind that must be interoperability. Interoperability is a key theme in terms of our organization. So we created our mission statement, and as I highlighted in the vision, it's about global reach, market-driven services being provided, and the key aspect of that is interoperability. So we were founded in June 2002. Discussions actually began in the early part of 2001. We have around 120 members from across the value chain. Operators, fixed and mobile, infrastructure providers, handset providers, software manufacturers, content providers, and so on. Can the audio-video person at the back please address the screen? Thank you. So we do have one screen on this side. So we have the value chain, a large part of the value chain participating and involved in OMA. And this is part of the reason for creating OMA. We're bringing together different landscape players who normally weren't involved with each other, who were staring at each other rather than working, cooperating with each other. And we found this a very good way of not only understanding each other, but also identifying the use cases to address and the services to build. And so how do we support this in terms of mobile services? Well, we don't build or manufacture services directly within OMA. We create what are called enablers. These are effectively specifications in the form of building blocks which, through a combination thereof, can result in different services being designed and being supported over mobile and fixed networks. So it's us providing these building blocks, which enables others outside OMA to develop and ensure that the services are there. And through our specification work, we drive interoperability in the way we design those specifications, and that then hopefully results in implementation in interoperability of those services when we're delivered. And what do we call these building blocks? The name we use for them is OMA enablers. So we have a somewhat traditional hierarchy in the organization. We have the board, which is responsible for fiduciary and legal aspects, and all technical work is devolved to the technical plenary. And the technical plenary has various working groups focusing on various technical areas of activity, each with their own terms of reference and work and as parts of the work program. But we have a very important aspect and approach to our work, which was decided right at the beginning. In other words, we must be market-driven. We must build on well-defined use cases. So as part of our requirements process, we identified the use cases. From those use cases, we derive the requirements. And once they're well established, we move on to defining the architecture to support those requirements and then the underlying technical specifications. So we have a well-defined process to ensure that we cascade as opposed to create out of thin air. But we also don't work alone. We work with many other SDOs, standards organizations, and fora. And we have well-defined agreements with over 50 of these organizations, which allow us to cooperate and share information, and enables us also to receive requirements, or in some cases develop specifications with other organizations. So we don't stand alone, we cooperate, and it's important that we do this to ensure that we benefit the industry as opposed to just benefiting our own selfish requirements. And we also, in that arrangement with other organizations, we have a FRAND IPR policy, which is common again amongst many SDOs. And as part of our relationships with our organizations, having a FRAND IPR policy ensures that we can share and interact with each other and reuse and reference our various specifications. And this is just, on this list, a subset of the number of enablers that we've created in OMA. And these are the ones we've created during the last 18 months or so. And as you can see, they cover multiple technical areas, things like person-to-person communications, access to content, devices, and so on, the various categories that we have. And as you can see, these are fairly widespread. We have, over the lifetime of OMA, created around 200 enabler specifications. In other words, 200 sets of specifications supporting or enabling various parts of services. And we've been very active. Indeed, during the past 10 years, we've had members contribute over 120,000 technical contributions to enable, as a result, these specifications to enabler specifications to be created. A key area of, or rather an example of our work is device management. In the past, devices were manufactured, put in the box, sold from the shop, or dispatched by the operator, and that was the last they saw of them. This was very aggravating. There were, in the past, would you believe it, phones with bugs in them, problems perhaps in the configuration, the setup, or even being able to configure it such that you can access new services and available. So the introduction of device management and the strong impact that OMA has had in this area has been very significant. And indeed, one of our enablers, the firmware update management object, has had over 1.4 billion implementations we've been advised. I personally believe that there's far more implementations of this because it's difficult to actually calculate how many there are. And especially in the whole range of device management and the other specifications, it's probably a much larger figure. But device management is one of those areas which can specifically support machine-to-machine, which is a burgeoning area which is becoming more important, more visible to the wider industry. And indeed, there is, as I'm sure most of you are aware, a new organization being established later this month called OneM2M, which is focusing on the service layer support for this area. And we believe that we can support the efforts of OneM2M and enable machine-to-machine services through the deployment of our OMA MDM. So in summary, we've been around for about 10 years. We've been working in a vast range of technical areas ranging from person-to-person, access to content and devices as suggested, and focusing in many areas right from our very early days on messaging. We have wide participation from across the value chain who are all involved. They're represented across the various global regions of the world. And with our key focus on interoperability, we believe that we can well support the efforts of messaging globally. Thank you.